Hello, my friends. Well, it is official. I have wrapped the end of my spring container season. And so I'm going to celebrate today and I'm going to take you with me. We are going to grab some coffee from one of my favorite coffee shops, Woodland Coffee here in Ballard. And then we are going to scoot off to the University of Washington. I have lived in Seattle my entire life and have never gone to see the cherry blossoms. So I'm going to celebrate today by going to view them and just enjoy Mother Nature. Slow down for a second in this beautiful spring season of ours and just take it in. Off we go. Okay, this is one of my favorite trees. It's a katsura and it's just leafing out. And it has these adorable little heart-shaped leaves. One of my favorites. So I know that we're coming to the UW to see all of the cherry blossoms, but this is another stunner that we can see this time of year, and this is Ribes sanguineum. This is flowering currant. And what I love is it just is like these droopy little clusters of flowers, absolutely gorgeous. I love the little tiny leaf shape. And the University of Washington has gone through extensive lengths to create one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever been on. So it's gonna be a fun field trip today. These little tiny flowers. This is like the most dainty rhododendron. That is so stinking cute. Look at that. Another stunner right now in our landscape world are magnolias. What I think are wonderful about magnolias is one of the oldest plants. I mean, this is literally a prehistoric plant. And you never see the yellow. You always see the pink. We see a lot of like the white royal star. But for me, this yellow is so special. And this is what I mean by the University of Washington is going through great lengths to create just a beautiful campus. Clearly freshly planted, so super fun to see. We have made it to the quad behind me, and I want to give you a little bit of history. So the Japanese cherry blossom was first brought to the U.S. around 1912. It landed in Seattle before they loaded it on train and took it to Washington, D.C. The cherry blossoms that we're about ready to see were actually planted in 1936 in the Arboretum. The Arboretum is absolutely incredible, but when they were building 520, which is one of the interstates, they actually moved them. And so they picked them up and they replanted them here at the University of Washington in this area that's referred to as the Quad. And kind of flash forward, so these trees are about 90 years old, and flash forward to 2005, they actually started taking cuttings so that they could plant more of these varieties throughout campus. So let's take a peek. This is totally and completely magical. It is, I mean, honestly, it's breathtaking. A lot of people confuse the flowering cherry and the flowering plum, so I want to take you in closely so you can see a couple of key differences. The first and foremost, you're going to have clusters of flowers emerging from a singular bud. So right here, for example, there's actually, it's hard to see, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flowers emerging from this one budding point. The next is actually, oh my gosh, I've got petals all over my hands. It's kind of magical. The next is with the tip of the flower petal. So let me take you up here. You can see ever so slightly against my finger how this petal tip is split. That is another key identifying characteristic of the cherry blossom versus the flowering plum. All right, another identifying characteristic is the bark. You are going to see more lines running this way, as well as these little kind of markings here. With a flowering plum, you are going to see a more uniform brown bark. This one tends to have a little bit more of a reddish tint to it. You can kind of see some of that coming through. These trees are so old and they are so covered in moss, and there's even some ferns hanging off of the trees, which I think is one of the most beautiful things about living in the Northwest and in such a humid, moisture-rich environment. One of the things that is so magical about this time of year is all of these petals falling on the ground, on top of the tree limbs. I mean, this is magical. Look at these giant magnolia blossoms. Look at this thing. This is huge. Absolutely gorgeous. Holy cow. This is a flowering plum, and this is such a great show of the difference. So do you see this right here? There's no split end. This is just cracked because it's aged. But there's a rounded tip, and also there's just a singular flower emerging from the bud on this side, whereas with the cherry blossom, we saw like 5 coming out of a singular bud. So this is a good example of the difference between the two. This is also the bark of the flowering plum. Do you see all these just like giant water spouts down here? Tons of, these are commonly referred to as suckers, but these are water spouts coming out of the base of the tree and the root system. And the other thing you're going to notice is, unlike the cherry, this one does not contain any of that horizontal signature look to the cherry. And this is more of like a mid-tone brown as well. One last note is about structure. Do you see how this plum is more upright and the canopy is tighter? Let me swing you around so you can see the cherry blossoms real quick. Here we are over at the cherry blossom. And what you can see is as we go up, this canopy swings out nice and wide. And what ends up happening here is how they've positioned these cherry blossom trees. Their canopies just become absolutely knitted together, which just, the effect is incredible. All right, my friends, thank you for coming along on my very first trip to see the cherry blossoms. They did not disappoint. Highly encourage, if you are in the Seattle area, take a moment, come down, really. I honestly think this is about feeling the season, which for me is so important because it reconnects me back to the joy of why I do what I do and this beautiful place that we call the Northwest. We'll see you in the next one. Say hello to your garden for me.